You have 72 hours to remove your belongings, or I'll have them thrown in the street. Diane stood in the foyer of my childhood home, my father's home, holding documents like they were weapons. This house belongs to me now. Everything in it belongs to me. I looked at the papers she was waving. A will. Dated 3 weeks before my father's death. Leaving everything to her. The mansion. The bank accounts. Even my grandmother's jewelry that had been promised to me since I was 8 years old. My hands didn't shake as I took the papers. I read every word while Diane watched me with that smug smile she'd perfected over the 6 years she'd been married to my father. The will looked legitimate. It had my father's signature. A notary stamp. Witness signatures I didn't recognize. I folded the papers and handed them back. I'll be out by Friday. Her smile widened. Smart girl. I knew you'd see reason. Unlike your father, you know when you're beaten. I walked upstairs to my old bedroom, packed a single suitcase, and left that same afternoon. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't call a lawyer. I just drove to the Hampton Inn on the highway and checked in for a week. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:30. It was Gerald Thompson, my father's estate attorney. His voice was shaking. Rachel, what the hell did you do? I just got a call from Diane's lawyer. They said you've accepted the new will without contest. Tell me that's not true. I signed the acknowledgement she gave me yesterday. You what? He wasn't just upset. He was screaming. Do you have any idea what you just gave up? Do you understand what that acknowledgement means in a legal proceeding? I think I do, Mr. Thompson. Rachel, please tell me you didn't walk away from a $3.2 million estate without even calling me first. I was looking out the hotel window at the parking lot, watching the sunrise. Mr. Thompson, when can you meet me? I think we need to talk about my father's estate plan. There was a long silence. Then his voice changed. Became careful. Professional. I'll be at your hotel in 40 minutes. Let me back up. I need to tell you how we got here. My father, James Morrison, died 4 months ago. Sudden heart attack at 62. He was a federal judge, well-respected, careful about every detail of his life. He raised me alone after my mother died when I was 6. It was just us for 26 years, until he met Diane Chen at a legal conference. Diane was everything my father wasn't. Flashy. Dramatic. She was a pharmaceutical sales rep who somehow got invited to speak on a panel about healthcare litigation. My father was smitten within weeks. They were married within 8 months. I tried to be happy for him. I really did. He seemed lighter around her. He laughed more. But there were things that bothered me. The way she'd steer him away from his old friends. How she convinced him to skip my architecture firm's opening because she'd planned a surprise trip to Napa. Small things that added up. Then there was the jewelry. My grandmother's collection. When she died, she left specific instructions that her pieces would go to me when I turned 30 or got married. Whichever came first. My father kept them in his study safe. A pearl necklace from 1940. A sapphire ring that had belonged to her grandmother. An Art Deco emerald bracelet. A gold locket with photos of her parents. On my 31st birthday, I asked my father about them. He looked confused. Diane said she saw you wearing the pearls last month. I assumed I'd already given them to you. I hadn't seen those pearls in 5 years. That night, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked Diane's Instagram. There she was, at a charity gala 3 weeks earlier, wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace. The caption read, "Feeling vintage glamorous in family heirlooms." When I confronted my father, Diane had an explanation ready. She'd borrowed them to have them cleaned and appraised for insurance purposes. She was planning to surprise me by having them professionally restored. My father believed her. Why wouldn't he? She was his wife. I let it go. I shouldn't have, but I did. 6 months later. My father called me on a Tuesday morning. His voice sounded off. Distant. Rachel. I need to talk to you about the house. Diane and I have been discussing our estate plan, and there are some changes we need to make. What kind of changes? It's complicated. Can you come for dinner on Saturday? I went. Diane made pot roast, my father's favorite. She was charming all evening, asking about my projects, complimenting my new haircut. After dessert, my father pulled out a folder. Your stepmother and I have been talking about what happens to the estate when I'm gone. The house is worth a considerable amount now, and there are tax implications we need to consider. Diane put her hand on his arm. What James is trying to say is that we think it would be best if the house went into a trust that we both control. That way, no matter what happens, there's continuity. The house stays in the family. I'm not following. The house is already in your name, Dad. It's in both our names now, Diane said smoothly. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. But James wants to make sure you're taken care of too, so we're setting up a structure where you'd inherit half the value when I eventually pass away. Half the value of my childhood home. I looked at my father. Dad, is this really what you want? He wouldn't meet my eyes. It's the sensible thing to do, Rachel. Diane has been a wonderful partner to me. She deserves security. I left that dinner with a knot in my stomach. Something was very wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what. My father had always been sharp as a tack about legal matters. This felt sloppy. Rushed. 2 months later, he was dead. The funeral was a blur. Diane played the grieving widow beautifully. She wore black Chanel and sobbed into a handkerchief. She accepted condolences from my father's colleagues with practiced grace. She even hugged me and whispered, "We only have each other now." The reading of the will was scheduled for 2 weeks after the funeral. I expected to meet with Mr. Thompson in his office. Instead, Diane called me the day before and said we should handle everything privately at the house. She'd hired her own attorney to expedite the process. Red flag number 1. I showed up to find Diane's attorney, a man named Richard Vance, who looked like he'd just graduated law school, sitting in my father's study. Mr. Thompson wasn't there. When I asked about him, Vance said, the decedent's widow has chosen to retain independent counsel for the estate settlement. Red flag number 2. Vance read the new will, everything to Diane, the house, the savings accounts, the investment portfolios, the vintage Mercedes. My father had restored himself, the collection of first-edition law books, even my father's military service medals from his time in the Army JAG Corps. I was mentioned once. To my daughter Rachel, I leave my love and the knowledge that she has always made me proud. That was it. Not even the sentimental items. Not the cufflinks I'd given him for his 60th birthday. Not the framed photo of my mother that sat on his desk for 30 years. I stood up. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson. You can contest the will if you like, Vance said, not unkindly. But Mrs. Morrison has documentation showing that your father was of sound mind when he executed this document. We have 2 witnesses, both nurses from his cardiologist's office. We have video of him signing it. It would be very difficult to overturn. Diane was watching me carefully. Rachel, your father and I discussed this many times. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He knew you had your career, your firm. He wasn't worried about you. My father had paid for my graduate school. He'd co-signed the lease on my first apartment. He'd loaned me $50,000 to start my architecture firm and never asked for it back. The idea that he thought I didn't need anything from his estate was absurd. But the will looked real. And I was tired. So tired of fighting. Tired of being the suspicious daughter who didn't trust her stepmother. Tired of feeling like I was crazy for questioning everything. Fine, I said. I'll clear out my things from my old room this week. That's when Diane's mask slipped, just for a second. She looked almost disappointed. Like she'd been hoping for a fight. Actually, Vance said, pulling out another document, we need you to sign an acknowledgement that you've received a copy of the will and that you understand your father's wishes. It's standard procedure. I should have read it more carefully. I should have taken it to my own lawyer. But I was 20 feet from my father's empty chair, in the room where he'd taught me to play chess and helped me with my physics homework, and all I wanted was to leave. I signed. I packed my things that afternoon. Clothes. Laptop. The photo albums my father had kept of my childhood. While I was in my room, I heard Diane on the phone in the hallway. No, she signed everything. She didn't even ask for a copy. I know, baby, I know. Just a few more weeks until we can sell. The appraiser said 3.4, easy. Meet me at the Bohemian tonight. Wear those earrings I gave you. I stood very still. Listened to her heels clicking down the stairs. Heard the front door close. Then I walked into my father's study and looked around. The medals were gone. The books were already packed in boxes. The photo of my mother was face down in the trash can. That's when I stopped being sad and started being something else entirely. I called Mr. Thompson from the hotel that night. Got his voicemail. Left a message asking him to call me urgently. He called back at 11 p.m. Rachel, I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Your stepmother's lawyer sent me a cease and desist. Said you'd retained independent counsel and I was to have no contact with you regarding the estate. I never said that. I never hired anyone. Then we need to talk. Tomorrow morning. First thing. That's where we are now. Mr. Thompson sitting across from me in the Hampton Inn breakfast area, his briefcase open, his expression grave. Rachel, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did you know about the trust? What trust? He pulled out a thick document. The James Morrison Family Irrevocable Trust. Established 9 years ago. The Savannah House is in it. So are most of the financial accounts. You're the sole beneficiary. I stared at him. That's impossible. Diane just showed me a will leaving everything to her. She showed you a will regarding your father's personal property. Which, I'll grant you, includes some valuable items. But the house? The investment accounts? Those have been in trust since long before he married Diane. She has no claim to them whatsoever. Then why would she show me that will? Why would her lawyer read it like it was the only document? Because she's hoping you don't know any better. And honestly, most people wouldn't. Trust administration is complicated. The house title is in the trust's name, not your father's individual name. Unless you knew to look for it, you'd never find it. But I signed that acknowledgement. An acknowledgement about the will. Not about the trust. They're separate legal instruments. You didn't waive any rights to the trust property because the will doesn't control the trust property. He leaned forward. Rachel. Your father came to see me 2 months before he died. He said Diane had been pressuring him to change his estate plan. He wanted to make sure the trust was ironclad. We amended it, added additional protections. He even recorded a video statement. A video? Mr. Thompson opened his laptop and turned it toward me. There was my father, sitting in Thompson's office, looking directly at the camera. Rachel, if you're watching this, then I'm gone, and something has happened with Diane. I pray I'm wrong about her. I pray this video never needs to be seen. But if I'm right, then you need to know the truth. Every asset that matters is in the trust. The house, the accounts, everything I built before I met her. She knows this. I told her a year ago when she started asking me to put her name on things. She didn't take it well. Since then, there have been incidents. Missing documents from my study. Phone calls with lawyers I didn't authorize. She asked me to sign papers twice, said they were for insurance purposes. I didn't sign them. I want you to know that whatever she tells you, whatever documents she produces, the trust is yours. Gerald has all the originals. He'll help you. I'm sorry I didn't protect you better from this situation. I thought love was enough. I was wrong. Take care of the house. Take care of yourself. You are everything I hoped you'd be. I watched it 3 times. By the 3rd time, I wasn't crying anymore. So the house is mine. The house is the trust's, and you're the trustee and sole beneficiary. Yes. Legally, Diane is currently trespassing. And the accounts? Yours. She has no authority to access them. The only assets she's entitled to under the will are personal property. Furniture. Clothing. The Mercedes is titled in your father's name alone, so technically, that's part of the probate estate. But everything else of significant value is outside her reach. I sat back. Thought about Diane's phone call. The appraiser. The meeting at the Bohemian. She's planning to sell the house. She can try. She can't succeed. She doesn't have title to sell. What happens when she finds out? That's up to you. We can handle this quietly, file the appropriate paperwork, remove her from the premises through formal channels. Or. He paused. Or we can let her dig herself a deeper hole. If she's committed fraud, attempted to steal trust property, that's criminal. Your father's video statement would be powerful evidence that she knew about the trust and deliberately tried to circumvent it. I thought about the jewelry. About my grandmother's pearls on Diane's neck. About my father's medals, gone. About the way she'd smiled when I signed that acknowledgement. How deep can the hole get? Mr. Thompson's expression was carefully neutral. How much rope do you want to give her? Over the next week, I let Diane think she'd won. I didn't return her calls. I didn't go back to the house. I let her believe I'd accepted my disinheritance and moved on with my life. Meanwhile, Mr. Thompson and I were busy. First, we secured the trust assets. Filed notices with every bank and investment firm. Established that I was the trustee and had sole authority over the accounts. Total value: $3.2 million, just like Diane had told her lawyer. Second, we hired a private investigator. His name was Marcus Webb, former FBI, and he was very good at his job. Within 3 days, he'd identified Diane's boyfriend, Trevor Yang, 28 years old, personal trainer at the gym where Diane had a membership. They'd been seeing each other for at least 18 months. The earrings she'd mentioned on the phone? My grandmother's sapphire studs. Marcus got photos of Trevor wearing a Rolex that matched the description of my father's watch. The one he'd worn every day since his army retirement. Third, we documented everything Diane was doing at the house. She'd hired an estate sale company to clear out my father's study. They were scheduled to come next week. She'd listed the Mercedes with a vintage car dealer. She'd even contacted 3 different real estate agents about listing the property. All of it illegal, since she didn't own any of those things. When do we stop her? I asked Mr. Thompson on day 6. When she's committed so many provable crimes that the district attorney can't ignore it. I've been in touch with an old colleague in the prosecutor's office. She's very interested in estate fraud cases. Especially when they involve vulnerable seniors. My father wasn't vulnerable. He was 62 and died suddenly. He'd recently married a woman 20 years his junior who immediately attempted to steal his estate from his only child. The optics are terrible for Diane. On day 8, Diane sold my father's law book collection to a rare book dealer in Charleston. Got $42,000 cash. Marcus documented the entire transaction. On day 9, she pawned my grandmother's emerald bracelet. $7,000. On day 10, she had Trevor move into the house. I was ready to stop her right then, but Mr. Thompson counseled patience. 1 more week. Let's see if she actually lists the house. That's when it becomes grand larceny. That weekend, Diane threw a party. I know because Marcus sent me photos. Trevor was there, wearing my father's medals pinned to his jacket like a costume. Diane was showing off her house to friends, telling them about the renovations she was planning, how she was going to modernize the old Victorian into something more contemporary. In one photo, she was standing under the portrait of my grandmother, wearing the pearl necklace and sapphire earrings, holding a glass of champagne, laughing. That's when I broke. Not in the way Diane wanted me to break. In the way that sharpens you into something she should have been afraid of. Set up the meeting, I told Mr. Thompson. Let's end this. On Monday morning, Mr. Thompson called Diane's attorney and requested an urgent meeting to discuss the estate. Said there were some irregularities that needed to be addressed. Could everyone meet at the house tomorrow at 10 a.m.? Diane probably thought I was going to contest the will. Maybe ask for some small personal items. She definitely didn't know what was coming. I arrived at 9:30. Let myself in with the key I'd never returned. Diane was in the kitchen with Trevor, both of them drinking coffee from my mother's china. She looked startled to see me. Rachel. I didn't expect you until 10. This is my house. I don't need an appointment. Trevor stood up. He was tall, muscular, wearing workout clothes, and an expression that said he'd been told I was the pathetic daughter who'd been cut out of the will. Hey, maybe you should wait outside until the lawyers get here. Diane doesn't need the drama. Trevor Yang, I said. 28. Personal trainer at Pinnacle Fitness. Previously employed at Gold's Gym until you were fired for stealing from clients' lockers. Arrested twice for passing bad checks. Currently violating parole by living here without notifying your PO of your address change. His face went white. I turned to Diane. You really know how to pick them. Get out of my house, Diane said. Your house? I pulled out my phone, opened the document Mr. Thompson had sent me, and held it up. This is the deed. The property title. See that? It says, the James Morrison Family Irrevocable Trust. Not Diane Chen. Not Diane Morrison. The trust. Which I control. She grabbed for the phone. I stepped back. You should also know that I've been documenting everything you've done for the past 2 weeks. The estate sale you scheduled. The Mercedes you sold. The book collection. The jewelry you pawned and gave away. The boyfriend you moved into stolen property. All of it. The doorbell rang, Mr. Thompson, right on time. Behind him was a woman I didn't recognize. Rachel, this is Deputy District Attorney Sarah Chen. No relation to your stepmother. She's here because I thought the prosecutor's office might be interested in what we've uncovered. Diane's lawyer arrived moments later. Richard Vance took one look at the woman in the suit and the badge on her belt and went pale. We all sat in the living room. My father's living room. My living room. DDA Chen spoke first. Mrs. Morrison, I'm going to read you your rights. You have the right to remain silent. What is this? Diane's voice was shrill. Richard, what's happening? Vance was looking through the documents Mr. Thompson had handed him. The trust documents. The video of my father. The photographs of Trevor wearing stolen property. The pawn shop receipts. The estate sale contracts for property Diane didn't own. Jesus Christ, Diane. What did you do? I didn't do anything. James left everything to me. The will says. The will covers probate property, Mr. Thompson said calmly. Which amounts to approximately $40,000 in personal items and the Mercedes, which is now sold, so that's theft. Everything else was in trust. You knew this. Judge Morrison told you about the trust a year before his death. We have documentation of that conversation. That's a lie. We have his calendar. The meeting in his study. The email he sent you afterward, specifically stating that the house and accounts were in trust and would remain that way. An email you never deleted, incidentally. It's still on the laptop you're currently using. Diane looked at Trevor. Trevor was edging toward the door. A police officer I hadn't noticed stepped in front of it. Mrs. Morrison, DDA Chen said, you're being charged with attempted theft by deception, fraud, and sale of stolen property. The value exceeds $50,000, which makes this a felony. You'll need to come with me. Richard, do something. Vance closed his briefcase. I'm going to need to withdraw as your counsel. There's a conflict here. I may be called as a witness to the fraud. They put Diane in handcuffs. She was screaming about how this was all a misunderstanding. How her stepdaughter had manipulated everyone. How she was the real victim. Trevor tried to run. Made it to the kitchen before two officers tackled him. They found my father's Rolex in his pocket. He'd been planning to take it with him. After they were gone, the house was quiet. Mr. Thompson was packing up his briefcase. The DA wants to interview you later this week. Victim statement. They'll need you to identify all the stolen property, provide values, that sort of thing. What happens to Diane? She'll probably plead out. She's looking at 3 to 5 years if it goes to trial. More if they add charges for the boyfriend's parole violation. I guess she'll take a deal. 2 years. With credit for time served. And my grandmother's jewelry? That's the priority. The pieces she pawned, we can recover through the court order. The ones she gave to Trevor, he's agreed to return them as part of his cooperation deal. We should have everything back within 30 days. 30 days later, I stood in Mr. Thompson's office while he opened a safe deposit box. Inside were my grandmother's pearls. The sapphire ring. The emerald bracelet. The gold locket. My father's Rolex. His medals. The pearls were scratched from where Diane had worn them without care. The bracelet's clasp was broken. But they were back. I'm going to have them restored, I said. Properly this time. Your grandmother would appreciate that. That afternoon, I went back to the house. My house. I walked through every room, opening windows, letting in light. The portrait of my grandmother was crooked. I straightened it. In my father's study, I put his medals back in their case. Arranged his first edition law books back on the shelves. Set the photo of my mother back on his desk, right where it belonged. The next week, I hosted a small gathering. Mr. Thompson, DDA Chen, Marcus Webb. A few of my father's old colleagues from the courthouse. We toasted with champagne from the wine cellar that Diane had thought she'd inherit. To James Morrison, Mr. Thompson said. Who knew how to protect what mattered? To justice, DDA Chen added. Which sometimes takes the scenic route. I raised my glass. To family. The kind you're born into and the kind you choose. 6 months later, I got a letter from Diane. She was at the Georgia Women's Correctional Facility. The letter was 3 pages of how sorry she was, how she'd made mistakes, how she hoped I could forgive her someday. She never mentioned my grandmother's jewelry. Never apologized for selling my father's books or having Trevor wear his medals. Never acknowledged what she'd actually done. I didn't write back. Trevor got 18 months for parole violation and receiving stolen property. He's out now. Last I heard, he was working at a gym in Macon, staying far away from Savannah. Diane's still inside. She'll be up for parole next year. Mr. Thompson says she'll probably write me again, asking me to support her parole application. He says I don't have to respond. I won't. As for me, I'm still in Savannah. Still running my architecture firm. I kept my father's house. Some people told me I should sell it, that there were too many bad memories. But they're wrong. The bad memories were just 6 years. The good ones are 34 years deep in these walls. I remodeled my father's study into a library. Put his books back where they belong, added my own architecture collection. The medals are in a shadow box on the wall. My grandmother's portrait hangs over the mantel, and I wear her pearls every time I have something important to celebrate. Last month, I hosted Thanksgiving. 14 people. Mr. Thompson and his wife. DDA Chen and her partner. Marcus Webb and his daughter. Friends from my firm. We filled the dining room my father built, used my mother's china, and I told stories about the judge who raised me, who taught me that protecting what you love sometimes means playing the long game. After dinner, Mr. Thompson pulled me aside. Your father would be proud of you. Not just for winning. For how you won. I almost gave up. I almost let her have it all. But you didn't. You trusted the system he believed in. You let justice work. The thing is, I learned something through all of this. Diane thought she was clever. She thought she'd found a way to take everything while making it look legal. She thought I'd be too emotional, too grief-stricken, too naive to fight back. She was wrong about all of it. The documents Diane had forged? They fell apart under basic scrutiny. The witnesses who signed the will? One of them admitted Diane paid her $200. The video of my father signing? Deep fake. And not even a good one. The timestamp was wrong, the lighting was wrong, and my father was wearing a tie he donated to Goodwill 3 years earlier. Her entire plan depended on me not knowing about the trust, not calling my father's real lawyer, not asking questions. It depended on me being too polite, too accommodating, too willing to believe the best of people. That's what she got wrong. My father didn't raise me to be accommodating. He raised me to be thorough. To ask questions. To document everything. To trust but verify. And when it came down to it, those lessons mattered more than any amount of money in any trust fund. The house is quiet now. Peaceful. I've been working on a restoration project, bringing back some of the original Victorian details that previous owners had covered up. Last week, I found something interesting behind a wall panel in the study. A letter. From my grandmother to my father, written the year before she died. In it, she talked about the jewelry she was leaving to me. Said she hoped it would remind me that some things are more valuable than their price tag. That legacy isn't about money. It's about knowing who you are and where you come from. I framed that letter. It hangs in the study now, next to the shadow box with my father's medals. Sometimes I walk through the house at night, turning off lights, checking locks. I'll pass my grandmother's portrait or my mother's photo or my father's books, and I'll feel them there with me. Not as ghosts, but as roots. As foundation. Diane tried to steal my inheritance. But she didn't understand what my inheritance actually was. It wasn't the house or the money or even the jewelry, precious as those things are. It was the knowledge that I come from people who built things meant to last. Who valued truth over convenience. Who understood that the most important things in life can't be taken by force or fraud or manipulation. They can only be given freely, or earned through integrity. Diane's in prison, learning that lesson the hard way. And I'm here, in my house, wearing my grandmother's pearls, living my father's values, building a life that honors everything they taught me. That's the real inheritance. And no one can ever take that away. If you've ever felt like someone was trying to steal from you, not just your property but your dignity, your peace, your sense of security, I want you to know something. Document everything. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. And find people who know more than you do about the law, about your rights, about how to protect what matters. Because here's what I learned. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just refusing to be the victim someone tried to make you. It's standing in your truth, protecting what's yours, and letting justice do exactly what it's designed to do. Diane thought she'd won when I signed that acknowledgement and walked away. She thought my silence meant surrender. She couldn't have been more wrong. My silence meant I was listening, learning, planning. And when the time came to act, I didn't do it with emotion or drama or revenge fantasies. I did it with lawyers and documentation and the legal system my father spent his career serving. That's the story. That's how I went from being the daughter who was about to lose everything to the woman who got it all back. Plus the satisfaction of knowing that the person who tried to steal from me is exactly where she belongs. Wear your grandmother's pearls. Keep your father's medals. Honor the people who loved you by protecting what they built. And never, ever sign something without reading it twice and calling your lawyer. Trust me on that one.